floor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh Toso. Thanks again for joining in and welcome back to the Starboard Portal. We have a very special treat for you today, an exclusive interview with the legendary sailing Reed brothers, Brad and Ken. Thanks, Brad and Ken, for joining us today, and thank you all to all of our viewers for tuning in, and also to those of you who are going to watch this presentation later on playback. If you want to see some more of the great things that North Sails and Sail Newport are doing, head over to northsails.com and sailnewport.org to learn more. There are links to right down in the description of the YouTube player here. And if you enjoyed today's session or any of the other sessions that we put on, please support our efforts to build a community of active and engaged sailors through the Starboard Portal by purchasing or renewing US Sailing membership. We have a lot of great content coming up on the schedule over the next month or so. And thanks to US Sailing members, we're able to adapt and evolve to better serve sailors with content like this. So please visit us at mem.ussailing.org to join or renew your US Sailing membership today. Now on to the big show. As mentioned, we have a very special treat for you all today, two legendary brothers and titans in the sailing industry. Brad Reed is Executive Director of Sail Newport and directs the nonprofit organization dedicated to public access to the sport of sailing, which provides custom programs for schools, municipal organizations, adults, and youth. Under his direction, Sail Newport also manages local, regional, and international and world-class regattas. In 2012, Brad was appointed the chairman of the host committee for the America's Cup World Series Newport by then Governor Chafee. He directed a 30-person team and committee to plan the successful 2012 event. Brad also was the person who led the Rhode Island's winning bid to be chosen for the city to host the Volvo Ocean Race. The events that were held in May of 2015 and 2018 were the most successful North American stopovers in the race's global history. The two events were attended by over 230,000 visitors and generated nearly $100 million to Rhode Island's economy. For Sail Newport, Brad was also the One Design sales manager at North Sails. From a sailing side, Brad's an avid sailor and works as a member of the afterguard on a variety of racing yachts. He was twice nominated as Rolex Yachtsman of the Year, and is an 8-time world and North American champion as helmsman, including 2 J24 World Championships, and has won a dozen East Coast and national championships. He was also a collegiate All-American sailor at Boston University, and was College Sailor of the Year in 1986. I believe I got it right. Right, Brad? And also, we call him Brad's older brother.
Well, wait, we forgot one other thing.
Oh, one other thing. I hope you all can see that one.
It's shorter. Don't forget shorter.
I'm shorter.
I hope you all can see. This is going to be a really fun session here today. So I hope you tell your friends to join in if it's not too late for them to join in and watch this session here. So Brad's older brother, Ken Reed, is one of the most accomplished sailors and celebrated sailors in the world. He's won the Rolex Yachtsman of the Year award twice and has won 9 world championships, including 6 J24 World Championships, 4 of which were in a row from 91 to 94. Ken is also college sailing All-American at Boston University as well, and College Sailor of the Year in '82. Ken joined North Sails in 1996 when the company acquired the sailmaking business that he started with Dan Neri. In 20 plus years at North, Ken has mainly been on the selling side of the company while mixing in 4 sabbaticals, helming 2 of Dennis Connor's America's Cup programs and 2 Volvo Ocean Race campaigns with Puma Ocean Racing. In 2013, Ken returned to the business and sailmaking roots as president of North Sails Group, and he's still sailing actively, most recently skippering the record-breaking Comanche. Ken has also become an ambassador to the sport of sailing and serves as an NBC sports color commentator for America's Cup. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Brad and Ken Reed. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Josh.
So guys, before we get into some of the fun questions, we kind of wanted to hit the nail right on the head. We're all kind of watching this virtually because we're all basically at our homes or stuck in our offices with stay-at-home orders because of a situation that I don't think any of us could have foreseen coming and that any of us have really dealt with in our lifetimes. So I kind of like to hear from you guys each. Maybe we'll start with Brad and then go to Ken. I want to look at it on the optimistic side. Everyone's really kind of looking at this with the worst case scenarios and why shouldn't you? but I really want to look at the optimistic side and ask you, where do you see the opportunity coming out of this situation that we're in, not only for your organization at Sail Newport and North Sails, but also as our sport? Where's the opportunity here when we come out of this?
Well, first of all, thanks to US Sailing for putting these on. These are fun. It's really fun to have all these different opportunities to see some of our friends in the sport able to communicate together in these different ways. So thanks to US Sailing and to you, Josh, for putting these on. We see a bunch of opportunities, and sure, yeah, there's some issues, obviously, with social distancing. How do you run programs? How do you run regattas? How do you run a lot of different elements of our sport? But I see the opportunities to bring sailing back a little more local. There's a lot of programming in this sport, like every sport, that has become kind of on a fairly elite level. Parents having to make choices of driving 12 hours in a car to go to a showcase lacrosse deal, or hockey or sailing. And I see youth recreational sports being able to become more local, become the local institutions becoming stronger. Hometown teams, hometown programming can get stronger and stronger. And also working with our local community centers. We may be doing more learn to race programs in the next year and a half than high level elite, high level training. But I do see opportunities. I see opportunities in the way we look at our businesses. There's definitely some areas of change that we're already starting to look at in programming, regattas, social events, et cetera. So yeah, there's financial hurdles that all of us have to look at and be ready for. But as things change and as things ease and as the economy starts to become more open and more open, we'll be able to really keep up with it and and like I said, the opportunity is bringing your sport more local, whether it's hockey, lacrosse, sailing, badminton, I don't care what it is. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Ken, what about you?
It's pretty rare that I agree with my brother. Listen, this is a great time to kind of look from within, and for me, I read Craig Lewick's article last week in Scuttlebutt, and he has some really good points and some points that I'm pounding on. Of course, he's a better writer than I am, so good for him. We can go one step further. The pros and the elite part of the sport have really dominated the sport over the last number of years, and I think in a way, upon reflection, it's taken a little bit away from what sailing really is. I think this is going to get, because we're all not going to be jumping on planes. We're not going to be looking at international regattas. Like Brad said, that looking local again and sailing local, I think is going to be really critical. But that includes just sailing, first of all, not necessarily racing.
Sailing, yeah.
Just cruising. I can't wait to go sailing. Last time I said that was bloody 40 years ago, so and yacht clubs, and the yacht club, I call out whenever I get the chance. I'm calling out any pro, any marine industry head, any opinion leader in the marine industry. We got to go back to our yacht club. So we got to get people enthusiastic again. The Tuesday night races, the yacht club cruises. Remember when we didn't have to have huge amounts of sponsorship, and all you had at the end of a day of racing was a keg of beer on the lawn of the yacht club? And the way it was just as much, or maybe more fun than all these big, huge, elaborate events. So I think it's time to kind of take a step back to how it was when there was a lot of grassroots, good old-fashioned grassroots sailing, and let's make sailing fun again. It might have lost its fun a little bit, and we got a real opportunity now. I really believe that.
I agree. Everyone's taking a deep breath, taking a long look at why they like to be on the water. And for me, it's just floating, being on anything. It's it's therapeutic. It's part of who we are. It's part of our lives and livelihoods, and and it's just an escape that everyone, I think, is missing on a different level right now. I look at these fourth graders that we have in our fourth grade sailing program with the Pell School, and they missed their spring. You know, they had an amazing fall, but they missed their spring. And we were creating a whole new, 200 brand new sailors, kids who'd never really had an opportunity to get on the water again, or before rather. And they will have that opportunity. We'll make that opportunity again. But I feel bad for them because they had this, they were looking forward to something. And I think all of us are now looking forward to sailing, just simply going sailing or boating even.
Yeah. All great points. And if I can interject my thought too, as well, one of the things that I think is a great opportunity when we come out of this is our sport, unlike a lot of other sports, maybe a little bit like golf, is inherently social distancing. And I think it's going to be a really big opportunity to get new people involved. They're itching to do something when they kind of come out of this. And, that's a really big opportunity for us to get new people involved. And I think there's another great opportunity that I'm going to hit on in a minute. But I do want to ask Ken a quick question that came up in the chat that has to do with this subject here. The question pertains to an article that you wrote for Seahorse Magazine in February, Ken, the perfect versus the good. And it seems even more timely considering the impact of COVID-19 right now. I'd just like you to talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's really, yeah, it is kind of good timing. I actually spoke to New York Yacht Club has every spring they have a big race committee recruitment and training. I think some of your national race committee trainers go around to yacht clubs all over the place and do a lot of training to these wonderful committees of people who do it for fun and fee for a sandwich, and go out and spend their weekends on the race committee boats running races for us all. And my whole point to them was, you got to just communicate with people that, guess what, we're just going to run races now. The perfection of sailing, I think, is killing it. Like postponing for a half a day because the sea breeze isn't quite in yet, or a postponement because the starting line is more than 3 degrees off, and then the pros and people like us whining because it wasn't a great race course. Tough luck. Go, ready, go. If there's ripples in the water, go. If it's a reach to the weather mark, go. Just let's maximize our time on the water, and it just be so much more enjoyable. It just feels like the intensity, is really strangling. It's very strangling sometimes. And I was just trying to introduce a bunch of ideas to try to, I honestly believe if you went to the pre-race skippers meeting and said, we're starting on time no matter what, and we're going to run twice as many races in half the amount of time because there's not going to be these wild postponements for perfection, people would be so happy. Or imagine the night before, when everybody in the world knows that there's not going to be any wind tomorrow morning. We got to wait for the sea breeze till 1. Imagine if the night before you told everybody we're going to start the race at 1, so you could go hang out with your family or go to, God forbid, breakfast with your wife or something like that, or go to your kids' soccer game. So anyway, I just think a little bit of common sense and just this perfection, it is strangling. I really believe it, and we got to keep promoting this all over, not just this country, but all over the world.
Brad.
Yeah, so this opportunity that is in front of us to change the way races are run might help this situation, what Kenny's talking about. And there's so many great, unbelievable volunteers, and our race managers are trying to do the best. And yes, sometimes we do overdo it a little bit on terms of making things perfect, but certainly weather forecasting and communication is getting so much better. We can make these calls, and I think we do a better job than we did 5 years ago at these things, and we can do better. But as we go forward to this summer or this sailing season, changes are thrust upon us that we've never had to do before. We may not be able to put 3 or 4 people on a mark boat because of social distancing guidelines. We may have to think about running races simply with government marks again, which I think is a positive. And as we go forward, it could be a situation where we're running, I'm right here on Brenton Cove, we could be running a start and a finish for a Tuesday night race, right off the pier. Start off the pier and go. And we can still cut it into different classes. You go, you come back, you finish, we take your time, we put your scores up.
Fun.
No socials. This is going to be a bummer part of the summer, no socials. And also we have these other opportunities. Like there's this race in Newport. It's a record. It's the Around Jamestown record run that they do every year. And Hugh Piggin and IAC put it on, and people go out and they time themselves. While we're waiting for the social distancing requirements to go up to 10 maybe, and then we can actually field a big boat or IC-37, we just run more of that. Because there's an aspect of all of this, which is where personal choice intersects institutional risk. If Sail Newport or New York Yacht Club or Ida Lewis or Sheboygan calls for a race and people come out, there's those people who are participating are taking the quote unquote risk of going sailing, much like they always have. But it's a choice thing. So we will run races when we're allowed to by our state government. And by the way, I think Rhode Island is leading the way in many ways. And I give our governor huge props for her leadership and making sure that things are going smoothly, not only on the marine side, but everything about what Rhode Island's doing. I'm a big fan. But when we're ready to go, we're going to run some races. They might not be like what Kenny said, the perfect windward leeward with a 90-degree offset and perfectly, done gates. It could be completely different than that. It could be going around buoys again and starting and finishing off the pier.
I got so sick of windward leeward races, I sailed around the world twice. So that's how tired of it I was.
I'm getting my texts are coming through on my machine, and Matt Duggan, who's our regatta director, said that I should plug the Archipelago Rally, which is that's the kind of concept that the Archipelago Rally is,
right,
which is a great little regatta that you sail what you bring, and really fun awards.
I think one of the things that I was talking to Willie Wells last week, and one of the things that he said, in terms of when we come out of this, we may not be able to have the social aspect of it, which is a big part of our sport. But what that's going to really show is, who's just in it for the social portion of it, who's in it for the sailing part of it. So I think that
they're not mutually exclusive things.
Yeah.
And you can't go to a football game, a baseball game. You can't go to a lot of things right now. So what can we do, Josh, as opposed to what we wish we could do? So let's stay with the proactive, the positive, and these are things we can do. And until things change, and God willing, there's a vaccine or some sort of treatment for this, we're gonna make it work some way or the other.
We can go sailing with our family again. What a concept that would be.
No. We won't go that far.
Yeah, you have to do that.
We'd have a damn good J24 team staying up my house right now. Becca, Brendan, Lauren, Kara, myself, we're in. We're ready.
You all should weigh in pretty well too.
Oh yeah, we'd be well under. Oh, maybe not me.
That was one of the things that I see as an opportunity too, is the resurgence of family sailing. And I kind of wanted to parlay that opportunity into talking a little bit about your two experience kind of growing up sailing together in the sailing family and working together as you went along in your careers, and kind of starting out and understanding that you guys started sailing together at Barrington Yacht Club, and maybe you could just give us a insight of what was it like junior sailing, at the same yacht club together, understanding you guys were separated by 4 years or so?
3.
3? Sorry, 3 years?
And a half.
3.5. I was close.
But who's counting?
I am.
So,
even though I have more gray hair, I don't know how.
Fortunately, we were just far enough apart to never be in the same age group. Because if we were in the same age group, neither of us would be, or one of us would be here because the other would probably be dead.
Especially in hockey.
Exactly. We were very fortunate. I don't think my parents did it on purpose. Our parents did it on purpose, but being separated by more than 2 years for he and I, thank goodness.
But the sailing part, the sailing thing, my dad, my mom, we were fortunate enough that they had a little cruising boat. And well before Barrington Yacht Club, we were taught how to sail on that cruising boat, going out in the Kickamuit River, sailing to Cuttyhunk every weekend, as many weekends as we could, and towing around a sunfish, learning how to sail that way. So we were really fortunate. And which brings me to the greatest point of this interview. You guys, you were nice enough to say how good of sailors we are. The best sailor in our family is Bob Reed, our dad.
Most likely. He knows how to start it. He knows how to barge at the weather end, make it every time, tacks, and goes right wherever he is, and usually wins the race because of it. So there's no tactics. There's plenty of light beer from Miller, and you barge. That's. And
the more tacks you do, the more times you have to put your beer down.
Right. So it's in essence, there's two tacks technically on a beat. So it's he's pretty well thought.
How would you guys, knowing that you never really were in the same age bracket there, looking at it now, how would you guys, handle sailing together? Is there a possible Ken Brad double-handed offshore campaign in the works?
Well, no.
People leave, one come back.
Yeah, we'd be single-handed on the way back. And whoever wins, their other family can't ask any questions. Just accept the result of whoever comes back won.
We sailed together. So Brad and I sailed together in the J24 a lot. You did the bow right on the J24 for at least
86 worlds, the 86
World Championship.
Yep.
And a couple summers, and actually early on, a lot of sailing together. And then we remember when we sailed the 505. We borrowed Neil Fowler's. Was it Neil Fowler's 505? And Brad, because he's so much shorter than I am, it made sense for him to drive, and so I'm on the wire, which I'd never done before, by the way, and I'm sure I really sucked at it. And we almost killed each other. I mean, but I had a great advantage because I could kick him from being out on the wire, so I could give him kidney shots with my foot while we were going upwind. So.
Well, it was downwind that was the problem. We're just blast reaching. It's blowing like 18. We didn't know what we were doing. We happened to be winning this race at this 5-0 regatta with Mark Lindsay and all these superstars, 5-0 sailors. And Kenny's like, "You're not steering right. You're not steering right." Meanwhile, the spinnaker is flogging in the background. I'm like, just pull the damn spinnaker in.
Those are details that we really don't need to talk about right now.
Well, he asked the question.
I'd like to know.
It was really, but sailing my parents at a young age. That was my life. I mean, I think you can see it. You can sense it from us and our whole. Is that the boat?
No, this is I don't know if you can see it really well.
Oh, it's a pen and ink of
there
our
it is.
boat leaving the Barrington, going out the Barrington River, towing a sunfish in a dinghy. But that was our life every weekend. I mean, that's just what we did as a family. That's what we did, and it was awesome. I mean, it was our life. And Friday night, you got on the boat, and on Sunday evening, you came back, and that was just what we did. So we didn't know anything else. So it was pretty nice, and that's kind of part of why we're both maybe a little more hands-on when it comes to talking about local and staying local and yacht clubs and all that whole influence, because it totally influenced our careers, our lives.
And I still love cruising. I mean, we go with the family all the time. We've got our cruising boat, our old cruising boat in the corner here. Kenny's got his boat that he and Melissa are out on all the time. And to me, it's just second nature. We're very fortunate. And, public access to sailing back then was, if you owned a boat, you could go on the water, or if you belonged to a yacht club, you could go to a youth sailing program. And that's where this place is. It was such a game changer in the 80s to have something like this in Rhode Island. And it's really expanded the total number of sailors in this community who come back all the time and say, "Oh, I took sailing lessons at Sail Newport in 1994, and I just got back from the BVIs from chartering a boat. And I never would have done that if my parents didn't toss me into Sail Newport summer sailing." So it's, we've become a mainstream sport here in Rhode Island, mostly because of Providence Community Boating, East Bay Sailing Foundation, Greenwich Bay Sailing Association, and the yacht clubs, who are becoming more and more open to non-members, kids taking lessons at the yacht clubs. It's got to keep going that way. Otherwise, sailing's going to, further plateau or shrink. So we're lucky. Newport is a sailing mecca, and we're proud of it, and we're proud to build on it.
Now, did I read somewhere that you used to double hand the sunfish that you would tow behind the boat?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't, but in Rhode Island, in Narragansett Bay, the beginner class was sunfish doubles. And I sailed with my friend John Healy and another friend, Sarah Puliston. And that was my introduction to sailboat racing, with Sunny Dubs.
Yeah, no opties. We were pre-opties.
No opties, no sabots.
No sabots, no.
Now, other than sailing together or being a sailing family, you guys, from what I understand, are also a hockey family. And I think that it's important that, in terms of building skills throughout other sports and how those relate back to sailing. So I'd love to hear kind of your guys' take on that. I know that, you guys are pretty well accomplished in the sport of hockey. And Brad, I know you kind of still play here and there and coach as well. So I kind of love to hear your thoughts in terms of your experiences within that sport specifically, and then also kind of how that translates into your sailing experiences.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think it's really clear for us, because I see a lot of parents pushing their kids way too hard in the sailing as a 365-day sport, and it burns them out. So it was always, when we were in Boston University, it was really amazing to see the kids from the Northeast who had something to do in the winter and then sailed in the summer. We were just kind of finding our own. We were just starting to show the interest and desire in sailing, because then all the kids from California and Florida showed up. And you know what? They've been doing it year round their whole life. And the thought for us to go out practicing in the afternoon on the Charles River was like, get out of class, let's go. Let's go. It just seemed like kids that did it all the time just were kind of burned out. They just didn't have that drive that they did. Now, I'm sure there's tons of exceptions, but my point is that being an avid hockey family, and my dad played hockey at Brown, and my mom ran the programs, ran the youth hockey program in Peacock, and with a whole bunch of people, they got a rink built, and they were pretty involved, really involved. Dad was our coach most of the time on our different teams, but it was a full, we were committed hockey players, a hockey family in the winter, and then a very committed sailing family in the summer. So we had just these two sports that consumed our lives, yet it did us to get burnt on either of them. And I think sailing really taught us kind of team sport, like there's nothing better than sitting in the locker room with a bunch of your buddies and, either after the game, and especially, Josh, old man's hockey, and you're drinking a beer after the game with all your buddies in the locker room, and it's every walk of life as you look around the room. And team sport teaches you so much, and so I wouldn't trade that whole experience for the world.
I think I'd echo that with Kenny about, I think it taught us a different kind of teamwork, because we'd been sailing in 1- and 2-person boats, and then with our family on the cruising boat. But when you're on a team with 15 players and a couple goalies and old people yelling at you when you're a kid, how to play, to play hockey, it's different. And as much as I like high school sailing, and I love high school sailing, there's some really good sailors that decide to play lacrosse in the spring. And I always advocate for a really good sailor, if they're a good lacrosse player, to go play lacrosse. Because go play that team sport. You're not necessarily going to be playing lacrosse when you're 45. You're going to be sailing when you're 45. So, take the opportunities to do the team sports, learn a little bit different. And I really believe that what Kenny said about overdoing one sport or being professionalized in one sport at the age of 13, 15, even 17. As Ed Adams once told me, kids don't pick their life sports until they're 16 through 20. They don't pick them when they're 12 and 13. And yeah, the Optimus program's great, but do something else. Play hockey. Matt Duggan's texting me 364 more days till hockey tryouts. But this opportunity though we can start looking at those things more. Play baseball, play hockey, play lacrosse, go sailing. It's all good.
Yep.
Now in the 2015 Volvo Ocean Race start, I think we had a pretty famous local hockey player as one of the celebrity ride-ons. Did you have any involvement in getting Big Z there?
Well, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing came to me and asked, what great superstar can we get from the sports? And the Bruins had just gotten eliminated in the playoffs. And I said, call Boston Bruins, call the Bruins. And I forget who got it done, but Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing got Zdeno Chara from the Boston Bruins to come down, and we got Newport Hockey involved. And, yep, there we go. Little Chara shirt.
That was the shirt from that day with signature as we speak.
Yeah, I got a couple of hockey sticks at home, but he came down and we brought a net from St. George's over, and we got a speed gun, or like a speed radar detector thingy, and set up a shooting area. And there was a guy, one of the Portuguese guys from Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing. He'd never picked up a hockey stick in his life. And he took a shot, and for some reason, the radar gun went way higher for his shot than Chara's shot. It was hilarious. And he was such a good sport. He went sailing with Ian Walker. It was a really good day. It was really cool to have Big Z down here.
Now, moving into kind of you guys both time at college, and just to hit on the hockey a little bit too, Ken, at BU there, did you have a chance at all, or did you think about, playing hockey in the winter and sailing on the team in the summer?
Oh, I certainly thought about it, and I was probably dreaming, but never tell a kid at that age that they can't do something, first of all. And when I say we had played hockey every winter, our whole life, we were in the rink at least 6 days a week, if not 7. And my parents, our parents had a lot invested in this as well. And I remember, so I went there, and I actually met with a hockey coach, and he did his research. He's actually a sailor, and Jack Parker, and he told me, you're gonna be a much better sailor than you are a hockey player at Boston University.
That's not how I tell this story, by the way.
What's that?
That's not how I tell this story, but keep going.
Well,
keep going.
He was right. He was right. Essentially, he was saying, you're not going to make the team, kid. And if you do, you're going to be, in the JV, in the dregs of the JV team, because BU had just won the national championship. So it was a good program. But of course, being a cocky kid, I thought I could do everything. And then I almost flunked out anyway my freshman year. And that was only sailing. So if I had tried to do both sports, I never would have made it. Not a chance.
Back to the sailing and hockey thing, summer hockey was becoming a thing, in like 78, 79. And Kenny and I went to our local rink in Seekonk, with our bags on our shoulders, coming straight from the yacht club. My dad had our gear in a car, and the three of us walked through the door to go to this clinic. And I remember turning right around, looking at each other, and walking right back out. And I don't know if you remember that, but that was a moment like, what are we doing going into a hockey rink in the middle of July? This is the dumbest thing ever. So love hockey, love other sports, do as many as you can.
Now, going into both of your times at BU, and did you have crossover at the same time on the sailing team? Ken, were you a senior and Brad a freshman?
Yeah, actually, we sailed together then. You might have a fair chunk, at least in the spring.
In the spring at Harvard, we sailed the Larks together.
and then at the Nationals down in Texas.
Yeah, I sailed with you in one race, and I sailed a lot with Nick Burke. I crewed for Nick Burke.
But it was Brad. So you know, I'm 6'1", and at the time, we were always losing weight. So I was 6'1", like 160 pounds, 163, 165 pounds. And, you know, little guys like him show up, they get into flying juniors and 420s, and they're just fast. So I'll tell you what, it made me work really hard, because like hell was I going to let that little shrimp beat me. And then sure enough, he came up on a recruiting day on the Charles, and I think he won the first race that you ever sailed. And everybody's like, whoa, your little brother's fast. It's like, well, yeah, he's really fast. So we just have to bludgeon him in other ways. So fortunately, he wasn't very bright that first year. He would have probably taken me off the team. But it was good. Brad was always fast. Brad was very fast. And then as his career went on at BU, it's a dangerous combination for people who are small, you know, have that advantage in a flying junior 420. When they finally figure out the tactics, they're almost unbeatable. So Brad had that going. That's why he was College Sailor of the Year, the final year of his career. So it was very cool.
It was fun. It was good looking up to him during his college career and watching him win nationals down at, what was it, Tulane? Is that where you won? Oh, where did you win nationals?
Long Beach. Long Beach. Yeah.
And yeah, so I knew I wanted to do that. Actually, I kind of wanted to go to Tufts. That was my dream, and got waitlisted there. Coach Ken didn't pick me, so no hard feelings, Coach Ken. But you know, I had a great experience at BU. Skip was a great coach. My crews, I had 3 crew for 2 years. I had 3 crew, a light, medium, and heavy air crew. Andy Morell was my heavy air crew from Tortola. Paul Briere from New Orleans was my medium air crew, and Terrell King, who lived in Greenwich, Connecticut, Cos Cob, was my light air crew. And I think hockey actually taught me to keep that all together, because that, you know, having 3 crew and getting them all in and making sure they all had time at regattas. And it was hard. It was hard to manage, but Skip was a great coach. Skip was actually also my daughter, Becca, and my son, Brendan's coach at URI. Brendan just graduated last spring. Becca's a junior. They now have Moose. They got Moose McClintock. A little shout out to our buddy Moose as their coach. And I feel terrible for all those high school and college kids, the seniors that lost their senior semester. But college sailing will come back. I had a long talk with John Mollicone today. I guess there's a big coaches call next week or something. And college sailing will be back bigger and better than ever.
Yeah. And shout out to my alumni as well at Brody Rams, you know, and Scott Chuck Norris is my coach for a little bit there. And I know he sailed a lot with you there, Kenny, as well too. But, you know, I think you hit on something important there, Brad, and it's really quite a travesty with a lot of this missing the spring nationals and with the seniors kind of outgoing. But I would like to kind of hear from both of you in terms of the importance that college sailing played in your kind of career moving up within the marine industry and within your racing career as well, and specifically Brad as well, you know, kind of what it's done for Becca and Brendan too, and college sailing on their side.
Well, just for me, you know, college sailing, it was a stepping stone to what professional sailing was back in the 80s, which was sailmaking or boat building or boat designing or rigging. There was no per diem professional sailing. So for me, you know, I kind of wanted, I was a sailmaker for Thurston Sails for my senior project in high school. I enjoyed it. I thought I was pretty good at it. I saw it as a way to stay competitive sailing, and college sailing allowed me the opportunity to become a good sailor. And, you know, these guys hiring me right out of college to come down and work at the loft. So for me, it was a way into a professional career of sailmaking that I think really helped me transform who I am, and taught me a lot of business skills, watching Dan Neary and Kenny, you know, Kenny on the sales side, Dan Neary on running the business side, and allowed for me to have the audacity at 33 years old to come try to run a sailing center that was already very successful. So for me, college sailing was an important part of my college education. And same thing with my kids. Brennan and Becca they really enjoyed their college sailing experience. And both of them are engineers, so they're both quite a bit smarter than either Kenny or me. So, and they have a different career path. They have, it might involve some maritime trades, but they're going to be engineers, and that's their primary focus. And they're doing a great job of balancing the two, competitive sailing and also doing a great job in school.
Well, same thing. Like Brad said, there was no pro sailing. So for any kids listening out there, and maybe even more importantly, the parents of kids who are, they want their kids to be superstars in anything, skiing, sailing, hockey, whatever. All of us as parents want our kids to be the best at everything. But the fact is that kids got to realize that there's no free lunch, and college sailing taught me the harder you work, the better you'll do. There is a next step. There is glory at the end of hard work, and fortunately it gave a career path. It allowed me, like you mentioned, Moose, Bill Shore and Doug Shore, but I wouldn't have met them if it weren't sailing J24s with Moose McClintock and borrowing boats on the bay. And you just keep stepping, you just keep having stepping stones. And I said in a recent interview, I wasn't smart enough to dream of doing an around the world race or being an America's Cup skipper. I was never that smart. I could dream of winning that race that day. And that's all we did. And thanks to guys like Moose who got me a job. Essentially, I was one of the only, I didn't know any other kid my senior year who had a job waiting for him when they got out of school. I had a job waiting for me at Shore Sales when I got out of school. And that to me was like, first of all, I was blown away, and our parents were way more blown away. They're like, "You have a what? You have a job?" It's like, yeah, I swear. And it just kept building from there. So it really, we owe so much to college sailing and guys like Skip White and the entire sailing community, and that teamwork of being involved in a college sailing team and success. And again, you gotta pass that test. You gotta pass that test in order to get to the next step. And fortunately, Brad and I both passed the test in college and had a nice little career made for us because of it.
And as many people did. Kara went to Brown, and right out of Brown, spent one summer back up in Camden, and then right into the marine industry at Navtech, which led to Hall Spars, which led to Rig Pro now. So there's many folks from the 80s that are still in the marine industry and still in coaching. Bob Adam from Salem State, Zoom Sailing. You can't get that guy away from boats, and I think a lot of that had to do with a really cool experience he had at Salem State. There's unknown Pete Melvin, one of the best boat designers in the world. He was an engineer at BU, went and worked at Grumman Allied Industries designing airplanes, and then came right back around and designs the best cruising catamarans in the world. And he was the one who made Emirates Team New Zealand fly. So
and my roommate for 2 years, so we won't hold that against him.
Yeah. Not only
I think you can see, Josh, how much college sailing has meant to us. Yeah. And I think the fact that it hasn't changed much over the years is probably the strongest, validation of college sailing that you could ever say. It hasn't changed. And I know there's pressure on the Olympic side to make the boats faster, more tweaky, better for heavier people. I kind of agree with that part. But don't change the basic nature of college sailing. I'm a big advocate for what it is and what it's done.
Not only the lessons that you learn there and being able to put them into effect in later in your career, but the relationships that you meet and the relationships that you make and kind of carry through the rest of your career, and the relationships that you make throughout sailing. I think that for me, at least, that started at college sailing and continued on through the career.
No question.
So my people texting me are just like, man, your brother is brutal on the height thing. But remember,
I love that you made signs.
I know, it terrifies me that you made signs, actually. That is terrifying.
You're wondering how many he has back there.
Well, he had to get his first punch in, so I give him credit for that. Nice job.
when you're shorter, you got to go scrappy early.
Well, at some point when we get down the line, we're going to let you guys ask each other a couple of questions. But I did want to hit on, out of college sailing, and you hit on a little bit as you went into shore and had that job waiting for you at shore. And I think that it's pretty, it doesn't happen a lot where a lot of family members get to work together that closely. And I know you guys work together at shore and then through Sobstad into North. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your experiences there, kind of working together through those, 3 transitions into 3 different companies and staying with each other, working through that.
Well,
I just did whatever I was told to do.
Yeah, well, Brad, I guess we were both examples of professional sailing at the time under a different cover. It was Bill and Doug Shore, and like I said, Moose, and you had your choice. Eric Gertz was building boats and haul spars down the street. At the time, the marine industry, it still is very strong here, but it was booming around here. So you really kind of had some choices, and all of the guys like Bill, Lowell North, for example, he called them the Tigers. He just hired, at the time, he hired the best sailboat racers in that he could find, and that's how he built North Sails, is getting the Tigers together. And Bill Shore, in essence, did the same thing on a much, much smaller scale, but Shore Sails was built off of a bunch of Tigers. And so when I went to work for Shore, and then when Dan and I figured out, we hawked, between the two of us, we had like $11.19, and we figured, we found a group up in Providence who would give us a really high interest loan that we paid off early, and we kind of turned into their poster child from a why the small business, I think a Small Business Association or something,
Administration.
Providence Business Association, maybe. Anyway, we were a pretty good success story because we were exactly the group that they wanted to give money to. So all of a sudden, Dan and I own a business, and we just continued with the same Lowell North, Bill Shore philosophy: get the Tigers. So I happen to know the next Tiger. So I think at the time, were we the only 2 brothers who had ever been College Sailor of the Year? I think that I think it's been done since then. But anyway, so why not hire the best kid coming out of college? And plus he's, plus you know him and you know what you're getting. So Brad, when we hired Brad, we just threw him straight into one design, and I was starting to sail slightly bigger boats, J24s, but Lightnings and Snipes and all kinds of, we were making tons of dinghy sails, and we just tossed him right into the fray, and that continued on for quite a while. Frankly, it might have continued, but we had a pretty shocking part of our life was when our mom passed away, and in the late 90s. And Brad, that's kind of when Brad took a deep breath and said, you know what, I'm gonna think of staying home a little bit more. And we were both coming into young families, and so that's I think probably the only reason why, fair chance that if Mom was still around, our biggest fan ever, we still might be working together. Who knows? But it took a life-changing event like that to get us to go in slightly different directions, both of course in the sport, but definitely different directions.
So, and just kind of a quick question, I think came up in the chat from our friend Dave Reed of Sailing World, and I think it's kind of pertinent here. Looking at the industry, and specifically the sailmakers and boat builders and pro sailors industry, how do you see that they can support this perceived kind of shift towards family-focused sailing?
Well, I don't think there's going to be much for pro sailors, so they don't have much of a choice right now. I think this is a take a look within moment for all of us who have made a living in the sport, and that includes pro sailors, to start to give a little back right now, because we need to rebuild. and we get a chance to rebuild from the grassroots level. U.S. Sailings of the world, the Sail Newports of the world, the yacht clubs of the world. This needs to be about local focus and grassroots. And
100%.
this is a shout out to every pro sailor who's sitting around in Newport right now going, man, oh man, what am I going to do? There's not many regattas. Go to a local yacht club or go to Sail Newport and teach some people how to sail, or go do a Tuesday night race if it's possible, or, just go support it, because without that support, I think a lot of people are realizing without giving back to the community like that, it can't continue the way it's continuing. So someday we may look back on this time and say, for the sport of sailing, in an ironic way, this is a blessing that we all figured it out, that all of a sudden we got whacked upside the head and said, hey, whoa, wait a second, we got to start giving back more. So I'm a firm believer that that's the direction where we're going. There's a lot of great sailors all over the United States. This is a full shout out. When we can, get back to your community sailing and be a part of it. And I went on the sailing committee at the New York Yacht Club because I was just kind of tired of complaining. So don't complain, go do something about it, and go help and go be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And so maybe it sounds cliche, but I think it's the right time.
Talking about the grassroots, side, and, Brad, as you started to make that shift, after a life-changing moment over to Sail Newport and kind of building those grassroots in the community side, I'd love to, hear a little bit about, your start there and your vision as to what you wanted to build and what it's become over there on the community sailing side, and then also as to the service that you provide to the state in terms of getting these huge big events here that really add to the economic viability of Rhode Island.
Well, sure. I mean, when I came here, there was already a great team in place. There was a great board of directors. Peggy Comfort was the board chair at the time. Jeff Johnstone was involved, David Pedrick, so many other people. They took a chance on a 33-year-old kid, and come to find out years and years later that apparently part of me getting the job was because I had a great writing sample. And talking about mom rolling over in her grave, holy smokes, I got hired because of a writing sample. And I think it was because I used a little bit of humor in it. They asked me to write a grant proposal to anyone. I could pick anybody to write a grant proposal to. So I went back, and you had to do it during the interview process. I went back in the back room, got on an old word processor, and wrote a letter to Buddy Cianci. And I asked for money from Buddy. And I asked it in a tongue-in-cheek yet, I guess, a coherent enough way that they didn't laugh me out of the room. Kim Hapgood had already been here for a couple of years, and she had coming from Martin County and what she had done down there and her ties with U.S. Sailing at the time, she had already started to transform the youth sailing program here. We had created 2-week programs allowing parents to utilize Sail Newport as another sporting opportunity for their kids through the summer. And what we needed was more stuff, more boats, more docks, more people, more training, a closer tie with the state, a closer tie with our philanthropic community. So we really concentrated on raising money for boats and docks and piers and buildings. As we did that, it became obvious that we were becoming more and more successful at getting more and more families who don't sail to bring their kids down, and we expanded out. And we have an amazing team right now that is 100% focused on those public access programs and building new programs with community agencies like the Martin Luther King Center, like working with YMCAs more and more, working with the high schools, working with the elementary schools. So we're uniquely positioned in the state park to offer something that not many people can do. We have 6 acres of land. We have an incredible opportunity with this land and a great relationship with the DEM who owns it. Now, currently the park is closed until we ease some restrictions around the state. But through the success of Sail Newport and the public programs, we were able to showcase some of our events and how they were economically important to Rhode Island. And as we went after a Volvo ocean race in 08, 09 and lost to Miami. We really took a deep breath, looked at it. As it turns out, losing that bid was the best thing that could have happened, because we really rallied the state support again. Kenny was a big help, going up to the State House with me a bunch. And we lobbied to get some support for infrastructure on the regatta end of our site. And we've used that effectively to bring in an America's Cup World Series, 2 Volvo Ocean Race stopovers, now 3. Hopefully we're talking to the SailGP folks. They want to think about bringing an event here, and we'd like to do it. It just has to be economically viable. And right now, if I were to go to the state and wanted to lobby for some funding for a sailing event, I'm not sure they'd let me in the door today. But as things come back to a more normal situation, I'm very positive on still remaining a site for these economically important super events.
And I know a big part of both Volvo Ocean Race stopovers, the AC World Series event, and basically everything that you guys put on at Sail Newport, a big part of that is sustainability. Looking at Earth Day just this Wednesday and Earth Week here is a great question in the chat that I just wanted to kind of pose to both of you in terms of Earth Day. And like to hear both of you kind of talk about the role that environmental education and advocacy has taken in your own sailing and the programs that you're involved in. So, I mean, Brad, you were going, I'll let you go first, and I'd love to hear from Kenny as well.
Sure. Well, environmental sustainability is something that sailors have always looked at because we try to keep our oceans clean. But things have changed over the years. I mean, things have changed. I mean, plastic is, the whole scourge of plastics in the ocean was really the thing that got us all focused in the same direction in 2012 and 2015. Without the partnerships of Clean Ocean Access here in Rhode Island, without Sailors for the Sea, 11th Hour Racing, all the different exploration zone participants, without the Donna Kellys of the world, who's a school teacher here in Newport, Rhode Island, coming up with a concept of putting a big giant exploration zone in a tent to teach more kids about the plight of the oceans, I don't think we would have then transitioned to creating this 4th grade program, which has been so successful. So sustainability was at the center. It was the centerpiece of Kim Hapgood, myself, everyone's plan to make these super events have some sort of environmental focus. And without the help and support of the 11th Hour Racings, the DEMs, everyone who was under that tent, and literally it was a huge tent, we wouldn't have taught the lessons that we wanted to get taught. So education was a big component, and it's really, it transferred into making this building as sustainable as we can. So it's everything we do. Every single thing we do has an eye towards sustainability and making sure that we're doing good things for our planet.
Well, I come at it from a slightly different direction. My daughter, Tori, just graduated from Villanova, and she was an environmental science major. And essentially, she's never said it quite like this, but essentially she's alluded to the fact that our generation has figured out how to wreck the world. So it's up to her generation to try to fix it. And she's been a great influence on me in what she's done. She's working for actually an ocean plastic redistribution company out in California. Some of the stuff that they're doing has really hit home in our industry. We certainly have a long way to go, but it's pretty close to fact that by the end of this year, at North Sails, we make 30,000 give or take sales a year. And every sail bag will be made out of recycled plastic. Every sail tie will be made out of recycled plastic. We work with a company in Sri Lanka, of all places, that recycles plastic into thread, and then we take that thread and we turn it into different things. The sail making industry, as far as sales are concerned, still have a way to go. We're actually funding two master's level programs in Europe at very high profile universities to try to figure out how to re-break down, to take apart sails and turn them into either something else reusable, or figure out how to get rid of them and not being just in a dumpster. I'm very proud of the sailing world as it's taken this on. Most events you go to now have all kinds of different features, like all of Brad's events, water bottles, something as simple as water bottles, and getting rid of water bottles on boats. It sounds like a little thing, but imagine the amount of water bottles 10 years ago that every boat in America went through in the course of a year's worth of sailing. So listen, we got a long way to go, but good for the industry to take it on, good for programs like Brad's, and good for my daughter for kicking me in the butt and making sure that that those of us who are probably slightly aged out on this need to snap out of it and figure this out and do something about it.
So those are great sentiments. I want to kind of get to a little bit more lighthearted side. We're at the hour mark, but if you guys don't mind, I'd love to kind of go a little bit more. People seem to like the conversation. I did promise Brad that he could ask Ken a couple of questions and that Ken could ask Brad if you wanted. But Brad, I wanted to give you the kind of the first shot if you want to go at your older brother there and ask him a question or two.
Okay, here's one. So you've been very open with your saying over the years that you don't get seasick, but I might have some documentation as a youngster that you used to get seasick. What was the food that you just could not handle? And if somebody actually even said the words, you'd projectile vomit.
Somehow you figured out how to turn this story around pretty good. We used to say, my mother got very seasick. I used to feel squeamish. I don't ever remember being seasick, but I remember talking a lot about brown rotten mayonnaise a lot when we were young kids. And that used to,
I would say blueberry pancakes to you.
Or blueberry blueberry pancakes. I might have gotten sick on blueberry pancakes once. Fortunately, knock on wood, I have not in a long time.
By the way, Josh, this was your idea, not ours.
So I have a question for you. So this is a way back question. Do you remember why, so we told you guys we used to tow around a sunfish when we were kids, every weekend when we'd go cruising as a family, and then we put the sunfish together. Do you remember, this is just a brain teaser, why Mom threw Dad out of every single race? Because my dad would do a time trial, and then Brad would do a time trial, and I would do a time trial, and we were little kids. So
his shorts were down around the bottom of his butt, and he was showing it was indecent exposure, I think.
That's exactly right. Yes. My father got thrown out of every race for indecent exposure. That's exactly correct. Hopefully
I have a couple of questions I'd like to just kind of hear you guys' thoughts on, a couple of these favorite types of things. So other than each other, I'd like to hear, who your favorite person to sail with or even race with, either one would be your favorite crew.
This is going to be hard.
All you're doing is making sure we
on our cruising boat first.
Well, that's very kind. All you're going to do is get us in trouble with a lot of different people. I'll tell you that. That's a good question. Who's favorite person to sail with? Well,
you gotta break it down into like genres, right? I mean, for me, my two teams that I sailed the J24 with for almost 15 years that were anchored by Randy Borges, Dunes and Moose, and Jay Miles and Sharkey and Gordon Borges. I mean, I wouldn't leave the dock for 15 years without Randy Borges. So Dunes, I guess, he's got to be right up there.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of those guys too, Brad Dimeo and Carl Anderson and Moose. Moose crossed over many generations of all of us. I'll take it to another group. Certainly Chuck Brown, Chuck, I got Chuck to come do a couple America's Cups with me, and we've done a million races from J-class boats down to J24s. And then I went around the world twice with Casey Smith, and I always say now I wouldn't leave the dock without Casey Smith on a big boat, because he can fix anything, he can do anything, he can make a boat go fast, and he can make sure the boat's in one piece when you get to the other end of an ocean. So those are probably a few people that stick out, but I apologize for the other 100,000 or so that we've sailed with over the years that have obviously helped to make our careers.
And lately, for me, sailing on the 12 meter with the team, all amateur group, kind of anchored by Gunther and Maggie Berman, Max Berman, and Duncan Skinner, who sits next to me the entire time, trimming the main with Lexi Gahagan. That whole 12 meter experience over the last few years has been tremendous, and I love that team. I love every team. They don't love me so much, but I love them.
Exactly.
So how about one where you won't hurt anyone's feelings? What's your favorite boat that you've raced on, whether it's specific boat or type? If you have a specific boat, go for it, but or a type of boat.
Easy for me. Volvo 70s were the greatest boats ever. I mean, they could scare you, they'd make you smile, they'd make you frustrated. I can't hear because of all the noise down below for so many thousands of miles. The development of it, the development of a box rule, but the development of a design within a box, working with these brilliant designers. Volvo 70, Comanche would probably be maybe tied, but you know, between essentially Comanche was a big Volvo 70 in a way, but working with guys like Juan K and Guillaume Verdier and VPLP and all these new modern young you know, really smart designers, and watching the integration of all these programs now in these really cool boats, it's something else. It's a different world, and it's a fun world. That part of it, that really high level ocean racing right now is, you know, now you know, Charlie Enright's going to be foiling around the world in a 60-footer, hopefully. So yeah, it's crazy development, and those two boats, the Volvo 70 and Comanche, they're pretty close to, they're near my heart, that's for sure.
All right, I'm going to say I'm going to join my favorite race and my favorite boat. It's the Caribbean 600, which is just an amazing event, an amazing race, and Ron O'Hanley's Cookson 50 Privateer, which is now almost, I want to say 15 years old to design, maybe even more. And the boat is just, it's just special. It's just such a special boat. Cannon keel, you know, some powered winches, some great people sailing on the boat. I always enjoyed that boat, and I think that's a pretty special boat.
And by the way, we'd be remiss not to say that the Johnstones and the J24 launched our careers. There's no question about that. There you go in the background. And so, you know, we always go to, I think everybody talks about the latest and greatest when there's questions like that, but without the J24, I don't think any of this happens. So
100%.
The local community around here in Newport that just so hard for the years, and Tuesday night races and all the development that went on there. So yeah, it would be pretty silly not to mention that.
And I know you went through a bunch of different J24s, Ken, and I'm sure Brad, Blind Squirrel is close to your heart.
That's the bet. That was my next one in line, was for sure the all three Blind Squirrels, the white one and the two yellow ones.
So if you could take anyone for a sail, dead or alive, it's kind of a play on that, take anyone to lunch or have anyone for dinner. Take anyone for a sail, dead or alive. Who is it? Go ahead, Brad.
I had my experience. I got to go sailing on Dorade with Olin Stevens. So I actually did it.
Oh, there you go. Ken?
I think I have a crew of Melgus and Paul Elfstrom. You know, I think those legends, guys like them in Europe and in the United States, those legends paved the way for careers for us. You know, Melgus Boatworks, and you know, Buddy was he doesn't know it, but he was a huge influence. You know, or reading books about the old whipreds, you know, and those crazy sailors that went around the world when they had no idea how to, you know, where the next weather system was coming from. Peter Blake and things like that. So I'd stick with Brad's theme: the legends, the Peter Blakes, the Buddy Melguses, the Paul Elfstroms. Special people paved the way.
So the last one of this, and then I have the one other you know, kind of request that I told you guys about beforehand. But growing up, you know, knowing back to the hockey stuff, you know, who was your favorite hockey player growing up? Who was your hockey idol?
Number 4.
Bobby
Easy.
Orr?
Bobby Orr. That's why I played defense, was because of Bobby Orr. I wanted to be Bobby Orr every minute of the day. So when Bobby Orr was, when they were winning Stanley Cups with Boston, people don't realize how good that guy was. he was special.
Mine is Bobby Orr, followed very closely by Terry O'Reilly.
In the penalty box. So one more question that came in the chat from whoever's handling the North Sales handle here, Ken. Of the two of you, who knows Narragansett Bay better? Who's the better local expert?
It's a good question.
It's an easy question. I'm way better around here than you are.
Wow. I was really trying to shift the dialogue here and say nice things, but forget that. Like Terry O'Reilly, the gloves are off.
Shake the hands.
So before we get too much gloves off here and too much problem.
No, I'm gonna say one thing.
Yeah.
Nobody's better outside in the ocean and a developing sea breeze than he is. I learned so much sailing the J-class regatta on Hahnemann out there. Just how he communicates how the build is happening. He doesn't have to look at a grid. I don't think he's ever actually looked at a computer generated file in his life. He's like, oh, no, it's going to be it's coming out of 160. Yeah, it'll stay left for the next 45 minutes to an hour. Then it's going to go back right. He used to, when we were sailing the J24 out there, he would always pray to Altitude Lou, who, if you remember, was the WBRU weather forecaster.
No,
Remember that?
it was the Yorsi factor. It
Or
was
the
Frank
Yorsi
Yorsi.
factor.
It was Frank Yorsi.
And
come on, righty. Come on, righty.
Out there, I think he's really, really good. I think up the bay, I think I'm okay.
I did want to ask you one question, Ken, about offshore sailing and specifically about the double-handed offshore event, looking to come into the Olympics in 2024. But it's specific to the situation that we're looking at, specifically coming out of this COVID-19 situation and social distancing. Feel like that double-handed sailing may have a big opportunity here, provide those social distancing regulations. And just love to hear your thoughts on that, knowing your support of that discipline and the opportunity that may present itself with the situation.
No, Josh, that's a great point, and thank you for bringing it up. I totally agree. Honestly, these social distancing, and Brad alluded to it earlier, these social distancing regulations, I think, are going to be as much hindrance to double racing as anything. Much of a controller, not a hindrance. Don't get me wrong. But single-handed and double-handed racing has kind of that built-in cushion, right? So, listen, I had a blast. Susie Leach and I, and we had so much fun going and sailing in that little Jeanneau 3300, and I was a huge proponent. Stan Honey, I've done a lot of miles with Stan. He's been talking about this for a long time on the world sailing level, is trying to get some sort of offshore component into the Olympics. It could really show the sport off in a different way, because this is going to be well televised. This is going to be kind of like one of those marathon moments where I think the marathon at one stage was the first event of the Olympics, and you kind of start and finish, and that was kind of, so I think for sailing, they're talking about this being kind of a beginning moment, the first 2 days of an Olympics type of thing, and all of a sudden you're going to be on board. There's going to be cameras all over these boats. You're going to be on board with these double-handed sailors, and they're saying you're going to sail in anything. If there's a mistral and in the med, guess what? Figure out how to reef, so it's going to be hard. It's going to be interesting, and I'm all for any part of our sport that can bring in some new blood and some new enthusiasm. And listen, like I kept saying during the whole double-handed event, well, I'm going to do more for sure. I don't know if it's an Olympic campaign per se, but I just enjoy the double-handed sailing. And anything that brings in more people, more enthusiasm, new faces, is great by me. That's getting boats off the dock. That's at North Sails, that's our motto. Let's just get boats off the dock. It doesn't matter in doing what, get boats off the dock. And then you mix in this double-handed side of things. I also, I just don't want to be seen as the guy jumping up and down and talking about double-handed. So many people have been doing this forever. It just took me this long to figure it out. I'm by no means the sounding board here. I'm a very late converter to this. You know, in Europe and France and England, double-handed sailing has been huge for a long time. So, and on the East Coast of the United States, West Coast, there's a lot of people, the Rich DeMoulins of the world. They've been doing it forever, and we just weren't smart enough to listen. And now all of a sudden they're developing these boats. They're pretty cool. You know, J Boats has a great boat that's applicable. Of course, Jeanneau, the Beneteau, the 35-footer with the funky little wings. There's a ton of boats that are really applicable and make it fun. And we had a blast. Susie and I had a blast, and we can't wait to do it again. Can't wait to do it again.
And I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit more. We have a great show on May 11th. We have Stan and Sally Honey on May 11th with Gary Jobson. So I'm sure that's going to, we'll get a little inside look on that as well too. So, you know, as we wrap up here, you know, one of the things that I wanted to ask you both about, and it's a little plug about another show that we're going to have a little bit later on in May. We're lucky enough to get Kimo Worthington and Rome Kirby of the USA Sail GP team on for a little interview in a few weeks. And I know you both are close to both of them. And so I wanted to, you know, ask Ken if he's got a little story about Kimo, keep it maybe PG. And if Brad has maybe a little story about Rome. And then when I have them on, I'm going to ask them the same thing about you guys.
Oh, well, there's too many stories about both of those guys. I guess the one thing is, well, two things with Kimo. First of all kidding aside, Kimo was my right hand and left hand, I think, for about 7 years there when we were doing the Puma campaign. So Puma doesn't happen without Kimo Worthington and how good he was. And then he came with me to North Sails, and he worked with us at North Sails for 5 years. So yeah, I think 13 years we worked together side by side. But then something, well, first of all, you got to ask Kimo, if you get him wound up, he can't say a sentence without using the word frickin'. He just frickin'. So you should have somebody like with a clicker on how many times, maybe a bet, like a pre-interview bet on how many times he says frickin'. And then I'm a little mad at Kimo right now, though, because a year and a half, 2 years ago, we're out on Common Fence Point, right at the very north end of Aquidneck Island, at the opposite end from, and he had a house out here. He and his wife, Carol, had a house out here forever, and kind of convinced me to move out here. I bought a house 3 doors down, and a year later, he split for Miami. So, you know, he kind of blew me off. So I'm kind of pissed at him right now.
We'll let him know that.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll get the clicker. Do we have to get a bleep button, or does he keep it PG?
No. That's why he does. That's why frickin'. It's just frickin'.
Okay.
He won't swear. It's just frickin'. And you get him wound up, and it'll be. And then of course I went. You know, I've known Rome for his whole life. I sailed 1 million miles with his father, Jerry, and then we chose Rome to be an under 30 in the second Puma campaign. And I think it's fun giving people their shot. You know, and it was giving Rome his shot, and he deserves it. He deserves all his acts and everything he's getting right now, because he's a hard worker and he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. And you know, I keep calling him a good kid. He's not a kid anymore.
And Brad, I'm sure you got a couple of good stories about Rome from back in, you know, his younger years. Yeah,
he was a driven kid. He was down here sailing a lot, playing hockey a lot. Really good athlete. He sailed 420s. When he got a little older, after he graduated from Ida Lewis, came over here, did a lot of his racing out of Sail Newport in his 420. Now he's down here all the time in his Moth. So he's a fixture. And, you know, a positive thing certainly about Rome, every single time I've asked him to come down and speak to some kids about his experiences, whether it's with the AC or the Volvo or moth sailing or anything, he comes down and talks to the kids. So he's given back. He's one of those guys you were referring to, Kenny, about giving back. And, you know, he's been very impressive.
So just to wrap up here as well, too, and I just want to Thank both of you guys. I know that you've been, U.S. sailing members as well for a long time, and most of our members don't necessarily have to be. There's only a select few that have to be and are required to be for certain things. And love to ask you and understand, what kind of keeps you being a U.S. sailing member, even though you're not necessarily required to be for the things that you're doing right now.
Well, the governing body of the sport is important, and we have to support it in the ways that we can. My team here is amazing, right? And we need that same membership to support this amazing team that you need membership for. Membership is a big part of your financial well-being. It's going to mean more than ever to organizations like ours to make sure that our member benefits are good and are speaking to our populations. But the governing body of the sport deserves our support, and happy to do it.
I remember it back to, was it North American Yacht Racing Union or something like that? Yeah.
USYRU.
And then it was USYRU. So I remember even one before that. So listen, I've made a career out of kind of winging it and promoting different things, and things come out well. And U.S. Sailing it needs to continue to promote the sport. We need loud voices to promote the sport because it's a sport we love, especially coming out of this crazy, tragic time. It's clean, it's outdoors. Like we were talking about, it's an opportunity for families to get back together again, to appropriately distance, to stay healthy. And U.S. Sailing has just done a great job over the years to make sure that all kinds of different aspects of the sport have a path. And we as sailors, we can't thank groups like Sail Newport and U.S. Sailing enough, because it's what you're shouting from the rooftop, and while we're taking advantage of utilizing the sport, you're making sure that things keep ticking and keep rolling along. And people don't appreciate that. It's too easy to pick on organizations for maybe what they in perception don't do, when look at the big picture of what they do. And so thank goodness for RIMTA around here, Rhode Island Marine Trade Association, what they've done during this crisis and how they've helped get marinas open and how safely do things. It's too easy to pick on these. It's kind of like why I joined the New York Yacht Club Sailing Committee, because I want to help. So help organizations like U.S. Sailing get better. And if you have ideas for U.S. Sailing, guess what? I bet they have a suggestion box you can call. Matter of fact, Josh, could you just put up your personal phone number and email address, and people can contact you with suggestions anytime they want. But in all seriousness, thank goodness for organizations like this, because you're promoting the sport and you're making it all work so all the rest of us can take advantage of it.
Yeah, and if you have any comments or questions, info@ussailing.org. It doesn't go to a black hole. We do have people that actually answer it as well too. Guys, thank you for go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, one little teaser. Dave Reed, I believe I'm going to be on with Matt Duggan, who's our regatta director. He doesn't know he's going to be on yet, but Sailing World's doing something, I believe, on Monday about regattas and what regattas may look like in the near future. So we've got some really good protocols that we've developed that I think we're going to be sharing some of them. Again, a lot of these have to get approved by state agencies and things before we can run anything. And but we're going to have a nice little discussion with Dave Reed from Sailing World on Monday.
Nice. And I know, kudos to both of you for everything you're doing during this situation as well, with content wise. I know that, Brad, you guys ran a really great session with Tom Duggan the other day as well too. And Tom's going to be on with us and Peter Reggio and Lynn Lynch a little bit later on next month. And Ken, I know North Sales is doing a great job with all these webinars. I've attended a couple of them, the J24 one specifically, but you guys have really been cranking those out. So, and I think you got a big super yacht one coming up, right?
We have a J class one tomorrow afternoon. I think it's 3:30. Yeah, northsales.com. And I think I was told this morning that we're up to 2,700 hours of North Sails webinars have been viewed over the last 3 weeks. So kudos to the North Sails team for figuring out how to do it overnight, and everybody who's doing this. Entertainment and inspiration and remember, everybody, we're going to be out in the water here soon, so we just got to give a little hope.
Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Any last words you guys got? I know you spent about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours with us now. But
I have one more question for Brad. When, I don't say this very often, but I am pretty proud. I'm quite proud of my younger brother, my little brother. Despite his height disadvantage, he's made a pretty nice career out of.
Here we go. Here we go. There was the setup.
When are you gonna run for governor? And because she's gonna be burned out after this. She's doing a really good job. But when are you gonna run for higher public office?
Let's see. Steve Prime always asks me, and he wants to be my my campaign manager. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stay out of politics for the time being.
I think you should run. It's time. Let's go.
No, the Patriots need a quarterback. I think I'm gonna go that route.
Not after tonight, I think. Number 36 pick. Watch out.
Okay.
Thought we were going to break some news here on the Starboard Portal, but guys, thanks so much for joining us. Very much appreciate it.
This was great. This was
yeah, a lot of fun, and we hope to have you guys back, maybe in some different standpoints separately, and talk about different things that you guys are passionate about. And I think that would be really cool. We got a packed schedule all the way up through the end of May, but we intend on keeping this thing going, past when we all get back out in the water too. So hope to have you guys back, and thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to all the viewers who tuned in, and all people who are going to watch this presentation. I'm sure many on playback some point later. And again, if you want to see some great things that are going on at North Sails and Sail Newport, northsails.com and sailnewport.org, definitely hit those up to learn more. If you enjoyed today's session or any of the other sessions that we put on, please do support our efforts in building a community of active, engaged sailors through the Starboard Portal by purchasing or renewing your U.S. Sailing membership. We have, as I mentioned, a lot of great content coming up. We got Sally and Stan Honey in a couple weeks. We got Rome Kirby and Kima Worthington in a couple weeks. We're working on a series with Gary Jobson of past Y of Y winners. So maybe we'll have you back at some point, Kenny, in that series. But please join us on all of this great content. And thank you to U.S. Sailing members. Thanks to them, we're able to do this and evolve and adapt to better serve these sailors with content like this. So visit us at mem.ussailing.org to join or renew your U.S. Sailing membership today. And guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.